So Steph Curry goes for 31, Klay Thompson 25, and Andrew Wiggins 18 points. And the Warriors still lose? Welcome to FaZe Fantasy Live with your host, Lonnie Z. Welcome to the show, everyone. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Game 3 of the NBA Finals featuring the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics. It was another great game. Well, it all depends on who you ask. If you ask the Warriors fans, they will say, no, it was not a great game. If you ask the Celtic fans, I'm sure that they will say, yes, it was a great game. Crazy. The game started out kind of like we expected. Boston has responded after a loss throughout the playoffs. They were 6-0. So everyone expected them to come out and play well. First time they've hosted an NBA Finals game in 12 years. So the crowd was fired up and they were ready to go. Their big guys came out to play and they did a great job. They started off fast and the Warriors got behind early. At the end of the first period, Boston had a 33-22 lead, and they carried it over into the second period where they won 35-34. So at the end of the first half, Boston was up by 12, and pretty much everything was going their way. But one thing we did notice is that Klay Thompson showed up. Klay Thompson had a great game. He had 25 points. He was 6 for 6 from the line. He was 5 for 13 from behind the arc. He really added a lot. And finally, you got to see Steph Curry and Klay Thompson be the Splash Brothers again. And it looked like, Golden State would come back and take this game because when the third period started, the Warriors really started doing what they do. They're the kings of the third period. They ran away with that period 33-25. So they closed the gap on Boston coming into the fourth period. Matter of fact, in the third period, Steph Curry hits a three and puts the Warriors up for the first time since the score was 2-0. So it looked like Boston, who had a large lead, they had led by, I think, as much as 17, 18 points at one point. And then it looked like they were just going to run away with this game. But Golden State didn't allow that. Golden State came back. They took the lead with about 3 minutes, 45 seconds left in the third. And it appeared that they were going to do it. But Boston just kept on and they were able to just take over and win the fourth period. And, ultimately they won the game 116-100. So the Boston Celtics, if anyone's wondering if they'll respond, yeah, they did respond. They're now 7-0 after a loss in these playoffs. And so we move on to game 4. Boston's up 2-1. Let's take a look at some of the numbers and let's see what happened, because it appeared that Boston was going to run away with the game. But then the Warriors kept clawing, kept fighting. They get back into the game. They even take the lead. So what happened? Let's check out the numbers. So far in this series, the numbers have really been close. This is the first time we see some separation in certain areas in these numbers. Field goal percentage. Boston was 43 of 89. Golden State was only 36 of 78. So they got a lot fewer shots off in this particular game. They were still 46%, which is not bad at all. Boston was 48%. From behind the arc, Golden State was 15 of 40, which is 37.5%, and Boston was 13 of 35, 37.1%. The free throws, Golden State only got to the line 15 times. They were 13 of 15, and Boston got there 24 times. They were 17 of 24. But I've said all along, there are two areas that determine who wins each game. And the team that leads in these two areas has won those games. In rebounds, the Warriors had 31 rebounds, Boston had 47. This is the first time in the series that there has been that wide of a separation between the two teams in rebounds. Up until this point, there was only one rebound difference between the two teams in the first two games. Turnovers. Boston had 12 turnovers. The Warriors had 17 turnovers. Ime Duque said he likes his team to be right about 12. Once they get beyond that, things start slipping away. They get too sloppy, too loose with the ball. Boston Celtics took care of the ball much, much better this time. But the biggest discrepancy in all the stats, points in the paint. And I think this is where you find, that the team so far that has scored the most points in the paint and has turned the ball over the least has won each game. Boston had 52 points in the paint, by far their best outing in these playoffs. Golden State only had 26 points in the paint. It appeared that when the Warriors were making their run, when they regained the lead, that that was a big turning point. That they would, do what the Warriors always do, win the third period, come back, win the game, close it out, win the game. Well, what Boston did right after that, Marcus Smart hits a three to give the Celtics the lead again. But then the next couple of possessions, Jason Tatum gets into the paint, he gets to the rim, he gets fouled, he puts in two free throws. Then he does another layup, he puts it in, he gets two more points. Boston went to the paint, they went to the hole, they went to the well whenever they felt like they needed to turn the momentum back to their side. They did a great job at attacking the paint. If they continue to do this, and if the Warriors continue to play the way that they played and allow Boston to do whatever they want to do down low, this series is over. Now, I'm not calling it over right now. I just said if the Warriors don't respond better, then there's no way they're going to beat the Celtics. The Celtics are too long, they're too athletic, they're a lot younger than Golden State. So I still believe they have the better team here, but that doesn't always mean the better team always wins. Usually the better team does win in a 7-game series. That's why I'm saying Boston will win this thing in 6. But let's just break some things down real quick. I got a text from a buddy of mine today, and he brought up a point to me that I was planning on talking about tonight, but he did me a real good solid, and he had already broken the numbers down for me. So it was like, wow, this is awesome. What's going on with the third period? Now, all I ever hear whenever I watch ESPN or NBA TV or any of those, they're always talking about how crucial and critical the third period is, how great the Golden State Warriors are in the third period. And you almost believe that whoever wins the third period is going to win the game. Boston has been horrible in the third period all throughout the playoffs, yet they're still here. But yet we keep talking about how important the third period is. And don't get me wrong, it is important. Let's check out the numbers in the third period. In this series alone, and this is courtesy of my buddy Chris P. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. He broke these numbers down for me. So Golden State has scored 106 points in the third period in this series. Boston has scored 63. That's a plus 43 for Golden State. They have won the third period in every game this series, yet they trail in the series 1-2. They are down 1-2. So, how can that be? What's going on? Well, it's pretty simple. Chris brought this to my attention. He said, "But did you know the fourth period? In the fourth period, Golden State Warriors have scored 47 points and Boston 87. That's a plus 40 for Boston." So it appears that the fourth period is kind of important too. And in all three of these games, Boston won the fourth period decisively, except for in game two, which they won only by 4 points. It was 24-20 in that period. But Golden State, they have not done well in the fourth period at all. Matter of fact, they only had 11 points in the fourth period in last night's game. That's not going to cut it. You know, they went 22 in the first, 34 in the second, 33 in the third, 11. If you only score 11 points in a quarter, first of all, you're not going to win that quarter. And if that happens, it can't be the final quarter of the game. So Golden State really needs to look at that number. They need to get into the paint more if they want to get back in this thing. You know, I really thought that going into game three, and even on my last episode, I said that the Boston Celtics would win game three, and then we'd see, and I wasn't sure. But I said Greg Anthony was asked, you know, who's going to win game three? And Greg Anthony said, I'm not sure about game three, but I believe after game four, we're going to be tied 2-2 going back to San Francisco. And I said, you know, I kind of agree with that. I think that that's a high probability that after the fourth game of this series, we're going to be all knotted up at two. But after last night's game, I'm not sure anymore. I feel like something happened last night. And, you know, Draymond wasn't doing all his little antics. And, you know, before I even get into what I feel happened last night, what happened to Draymond Green? I mean, really, what happened to Draymond Green? This guy, he went 1 for 4 from the floor and had 2 points. He had one block shot. The guy he was guarding most of the night, Jaylen Brown, lit him up for 27 points. In the post-game interview, he was more concerned about his podcast and him possibly leaking X's and O's than he was anything else. And I know that Draymond is Draymond. He's a different cat. He's a different dude. And believe me, he's a baller. So no disrespect. The guy can play basketball and he's an engine that won't quit. But when you bring all that attention on yourself, you better be ready when the critics are ready to call you out on some stuff. I also heard Clay Thompson, you know, they asked him about the fans and how that affected him. And he said, you know, they've played before rude fans before, you know, dropping F bombs in front of their kids. Yeah, way to go, Boston. That's what Clay said. But in a press conference, you have Draymond Green with his son sitting there cussing. But, you know, that's okay. And believe me, I grew up in the Bay Area. I've been to Warriors games, and trust me, they drop F bombs in front of their kids in Oakland and San Francisco too. So, you know, this isn't a big he say, she say. I just want, if these teams are going to play, let's not make excuses. And when you hear things like that, to me, it sounds like the Golden State Warriors, for some reason, are doing something that they normally don't do. They're allowing the outside noise get to them, and they don't look as focused as teams of past. They're here this year and they made it. Great story. They came out of the West, which really wasn't that strong. I know that Phoenix had a great year and all this and all that, but Golden State's road to the finals wasn't as hard or as difficult as the Boston Celtics road to the finals. So, if they want to have any chance of winning this championship, they're going to have Draymond Green step up and play like he can play. Boston had Jaylen Brown with 27, Jason Tatum 26, and Marcus Smart had 24. The Celtics' big three stepped up when they needed it the most in a pivotal game, coming back home after getting the split and getting home court advantage for the playoff, for the championship. Their big three stepped up. Al Horford was big. I'm not going to go into all their numbers, but Boston played more like a team last night. They played like a team that was hungry. They played like a team that's on the verge of something. And, I really think that something happened last night. I think something clicked for the Celtics. And if you listen to my last podcast, I talked about how the Celtics would have a good game and a bad game, and a great game and just a good enough to win game, and then a bad game, and then a good, they're up and down, up and down. They haven't put together two really, really good games yet in these entire playoffs, other than what they did in the first round to the Brooklyn Nets. But they haven't really put together two really, really good games. Now they've won two games in a row because they're here. But even the games that they won, some of the games that they won were really ugly and could have went either way. But they still haven't put together two solid games. I'm thinking Boston is about to put together another really good game. They just looked a little more focused, even after all the hoopla and all the stuff that went down in San Francisco in game two. Boston, they didn't look like they were uh, too much bothered by that. They definitely weren't intimidated by it. It did bother them during the game, and they lost that game. But I think they learned from that, and I think they'll be prepared when Draymond Green comes out in game four with that same, as he would put it, force. You know, Draymond said he has to approach the game differently. And I'm wondering, this is game three of the NBA Finals. Why do you have to approach the game differently? Shouldn't you already have that part down, Draymond? Shouldn't your approach be, I'm ready to play? What else do you need to get you excited about playing this game or get you ready to play this game? I think Draymond really let his team down. I think Steph Curry is carrying the Golden State Warriors on his back. Jordan Poole had 10 points off the bench. He contributed, but he's not the same Jordan Poole when they're behind as he is when they're out front. So the Warriors are going to need a lot of help. They're going to need a full team effort to take game four. The Boston Celtics smell blood, and I believe that they're going to win game four and go back to San Francisco up 3-1.